And where do you live now?
I live in Whippany at Leicester Senior Housing.
Oh, wonderful. We're
That's a
glad to
lovely
have
place.
you.
That's
How
great.
Ruth,
lovely.
Thelma's on a lot of our programs. Thelma's a regular at the J.
Oh, great.
Yes, that's why
Thelma's the
I'm
best. Thelma's the
Joanne.
best.
Hey, how are you?
Good. I see lots of people that I know from the JCC. Yeah.
Well, now
Reverend Sue.
You
Hi.
can't shake us, Ruth. We're everywhere. You can't
Yes.
shake the JCC.
Ruth, all I have to do is send it out in an email.
right.
I know who you are from our movies, from Social Action and all our movies.
Yes, hi Marilyn, how are
That's
you?
right.
Very good, thank you.
Good to
I'm
see
looking-
you. And I see Ethel and Bob. Hi Ethel and Bob. And I thought I saw Bobby.
You did.
Here.
Here I am.
Oh, and Honey Wasserman's on. Hi, Honey.
Hi, honey.
Joyce. Hi, Joyce.
Hello.
Oh, there's Bobby. I found you.
Yes.
And Beverly, are you here from, where are you from, Beverly?
Money.
Yeah. Two words I don't want to hear. You're muted. Ever.
There's folks here from Trinity too. Hello, Trinity
Oh,
people.
wonderful,
Oh, yes, hey,
wonderful,
Trinity.
wonderful. Our neighbors.
Hey, Susan.
Hey, Ruth, we're gonna get started soon at 7:31. What do you say, right?
Yeah, how about getting
People will
started?
trickle in. We have 66.
Hi, Marianne.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Go.
Just
Yes?
a reminder, you can also send messages in the chat, either
That's
to
right.
everybody or to somebody that you haven't seen in a while. So you can use the chat function. Just be careful which one you're using.
Yeah, the private chat.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know that.
So can I ask everybody to mute yourselves, please, so we can get going? Got a lot of ground to cover. Okay, I'm going to assume that everybody is muted. And if I look away, just imagine me looking at the podium. So instead of looking at the podium, I'm going to be looking away because I have my podium over there, my second computer. So good evening, everybody. So wave if you tonight, instead of, usually when I say good evening, I get a good evening back and it's usually lame. So then I say good evening. So in lieu of saying good evening, we're going to wave. Okay. So 1, 2, 3, good evening. Oh, those are great waves. I love it. I love it. My name is Janet Penn, and I'm one of the co-chairs of the Social Action Committee for this evening's event. And you will be hearing very soon from my co-chair, Ruth Ross. This is a joint, an annual joint event that we've been doing for 29 years. And it's always been co-sponsored with the Sisterhood, the Women's Connection of Temple B'nai Abraham. And we've chosen to observe Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s holiday with you, our neighbors, because the values that he stood for, acceptance, equality, nonviolent protest, have echoed throughout the 5 decades since. His speeches were bold, triumphant, and, touched with King's tireless need to revise. He certainly was a pioneer and an advocate who inspired generations through commitment to love and people. His dream of empowerment and inclusion is a notion that we are still fighting for even today. However, we can take a lot of solace in knowing that many of us continue to march on and fight for a better tomorrow. Pre-pandemic, many of you are repeaters, and you know that we all gathered together at Temple B'nai Abraham as members of many different houses of worship, women's organizations, and our very diverse Essex County and community. And quite frankly, lately we've gone beyond that. Our outreach is wide. Over the past decades, we've raised many conversations that we feel would be certainly of interest to all women, and men are always welcome to join our annual gathering. And, you know, we usually begin by sharing a meal together. But unfortunately, this year we cannot physically be together. Zooming is the next best thing. So we specifically selected this particular Zoom format as opposed to webinar format, so that everybody will have the opportunity to see each other, scroll through the pages, send a private message, you know, wave hello. So we really tried to do the best we could to continue that feeling of connection. And quite frankly, with that being said, this evening does promise to be one for the record books. I think we'll all agree. Dr. King said, history will have to record that the greatest tragedy of this period of social transition was not the strident clamor of the bad people, but the appalling silence of the good people. Very appropriate, as today was the inauguration day, ushering in messages of unity. And as President Biden said earlier today, this is a democracy's day, a day of history and hope, of renewal and resolve through a crucible for the ages. He was right on target with that one. And Dr. King also commented that the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in the moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. So while I have everybody's attention, I'd like to do the thank yous right now, and there are many. I want to thank all the members of the Sisterhood Women's Connection, the Social Action Committee who came up with the topic, most specifically Marilyn Rosenbaum, who came up with tonight's topic. You know, we had several meetings afterwards to go through, you know, okay, we have our topic, now let's develop the different areas. And some of the leaders within the Social Action Committee consist of, you know, Bob Singer and Terry Friedman and Helen Farber and Honey Wasserman and Merle Kalishman and Alice Miller and Lisa Riceboard. And if I have forgotten anybody totally inadvertently, put it in the chat and I will gladly give you a shout out as well, but I apologize for that. And directly from Temple B'nai Abraham, we can't do this without the support of the synagogue and the amazing people that, you know, help us out. So that would be our Zoom administrator, the gentleman that let you in and is running all the back end would be Tracy Bent, TBA office manager, Laura Wald, communications director, Tina Greenberg, Temple executive director, Gail Milchman, registration managers, Marcia Swaybill and Jill Jessic, Rabbi David Weisberg for his awesome support, awesome. And our clergy liaison, Max Edwards, for his support and unbelievable enthusiasm. Thank you all so very much. And thank you to our attendees. You're the ones that are coming back year after year after year, and inviting your friends and so on and so forth. So speaking of inviting, I want to take this time right now to invite Dawn Gaskins, the First Lady of Grace Temple, to give the blessing.
Dawn, you're muted.
Yeah, I think you have to unmute yourself, Dawn.
You have to unmute yourself,
Yeah,
Dawn.
no. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Lord, thank you for allowing us to be on this Zoom to celebrate the annual Women's Forum. And we want to thank you for another day, especially now as we celebrate the inauguration day and also for Dr. Martin Luther King. We ask you to cover us all with your blood. In the name of Jesus, I pray, amen.
Thank you very much. That was lovely.
Good evening. everybody. My name is Ruth Ross, and along with Janet, I am the co-chair of the Temple B'nai Abraham Social Action Committee. For me, this night has a somewhat surreal quality to it. On the one hand, it feels like only a few weeks since I welcomed you to the 28th Annual Women's Interfaith Forum in the Saul Reinfeld Hall at the Temple. On the other hand, it feels like 100 years since I welcomed you to that event. The pandemic and political upheaval has wrought havoc with my sense of time. Over the past 10 months, women have shown above all that they are resilient. Many of us have continued to work, albeit from home, acted as surrogate teachers and tutors to children attending virtual school, cooked meals, cleaned our houses, taken care of our spouses, partners, and aging parents. We are true embodiments of a multi-layered sandwich generation, and we did it all dancing backwards in high-heeled shoes. Thus, the topic we have chosen, how life has changed for us in a pandemic world, could not be more timely. To answer this question, we have assembled a panel of experts from 4 walks of life: mental health, religion, small business, and education. When our speakers are giving their presentations, if any questions arise, please write them in the chat box on your Zoom screen, and I will get to them in the Q&A period following their remarks. And don't forget to make sure you are muted so we don't get any side conversations intruding. Our first speaker, Dr. Huma Ansari, is a board-certified psychiatrist and a member of the American Psychiatric Association. Born and raised in India, Dr. Ansari came to the United States and trained at Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital in Somerset, New Jersey. She is a member of the Community of Islamic Society of Basking Ridge. Dr. Ansari.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for allowing to participate in this. I know most of you know each other for a long time. This is my first time, and I'm hoping to continue the connection going forward. So I guess we'll just jump into it. The topic is, how has pandemic changed our lives into it? I think we have been in this pandemic for so long that it's difficult, not difficult, but somewhat difficult to remember what it was. So I'm going to start my discussion by remembering what it was before the pandemic started. Considering mental health piece, I'm going to try and focus in that aspect only. So what was happening before pandemic, we had our home, which was only our home. We had our schools, which served as schools, and we had our workplaces. We had our vacation spots that we would choose every now and then. We had our weekend outings at whether they were restaurants or playgrounds, and every place had a defined role. All that obviously has changed. I think everyone here is an expert in knowing that and be able to talk about that. Our home has become pretty much everything. It's school, it's office, it's playground, it's our therapy session place, and it's our fighting ground, if you say so, if we can add that. Before pandemic, we used to leave all the stress out of the home. We would go out of the home, deal with the day's business, whether we were going to school, going to work, whatever our life, wherever it took us. By the time we returned home, we tried at least to leave the stress out and come home and relax, be with family, enjoy the time, and de-stress. Now that is also not happening anymore. The home is no longer just a place to de-stress. We are working from home, kids are studying from home, we are yelling at each other because there's too much noise. We are in each other's face all the time. Home is now where the stress is originating, and we have nowhere to go to de-stress. We can't go out and meet our friends. We can go watch a movie. We can go hang out and have, coffee. We can go out to any entertainment spot. There are no concerts happening that we can go to. So all the regular things have been eliminated or close to eliminated. Sure, we have a lot of Zoom obviously has been very helpful in connecting people, but we learned in school, I think elementary or middle school, that human being is a social animal. Now we have cut down that social part. So all we're doing is accumulating stress after stress after stress. And that builds up and that comes, that's where stress is probably one of the most common reasons why people develop mental health issues, be it depression, be it anxiety. And working in the emergency room in the crisis center at our hospital, I can say with firsthand experience that pandemic has resulted first and foremost in a lot of anxiety in people who have mental health issues, but also who has never had any issues, no family history, nothing. And dealing with anxiety for so many months, of course, depression has also seeped in. We worry about how long this pandemic is going to last, how long we have to isolate, right? We are cooped up in our homes. We are not socializing. Is the pandemic really coming to any close? There is vaccination, but then there are 10,000 questions about vaccine. Is it safe? Is it being pushed? Are we being experimented upon? And things like that. So there are multiple layers of anxiety coming in. And as Ms. Ross mentioned earlier, you know, with political environment and social unrest, all of that is just added push, added levels of stress that we're dealing with. I guess we all have our own specific areas that we are struggling with and where the stress comes from, what our challenges are. Personally, in our field, in our hospital per se, the biggest challenge has been how to keep everyone's morale up, right? Everyone says, you know, healthcare heroes and they're dealing with their frontline staff and whatnot. But how do we keep our nursing staff, our caretakers, you know, janitorial staff, how do we keep them from not giving up, becoming hopeless and not wanting to come to work? The nurses who deal with, you know, death, or our ICU doctors, physician assistants, APNs, who are experiencing death every single day. And not just death, but traumatic death, right? People who come in breathing fine and within a few hours, they can't be revived. These traumatic experiences, how do we keep them from becoming depressed themselves or being not able to function, right? One thing is they may get exposed and they have to stay out of workforce, but how do we keep them mentally focused that they are able to function, that, you know, the work that they're able to do, how do they keep on doing that day in and day out? So that has been the biggest challenge that we have dealt with. And I'm sure all across America, different hospitals, nursing facilities, everyone has dealt with this. I can tell you what our hospital did, just small little things. And it's just an example of how we can incorporate simple, small things to keep us uplifted. We have had in hospital, at least in the first wave, when we had a person, a patient who was admitted with COVID, when they got better, when they were discharged, they would play Beatles song Sunshine. Through the hospital overhead comm, that song will play. And that was a hope. Okay, people are getting better. It's not just all doom and gloom. It's not just people getting COVID and just dying. It's a death sentence. That's not the case. Across the hospital, across all levels of service providers can get a sense, okay, somebody is getting discharged. There's hope there, right? And when there are 2 in a day, when that started to happen, that was like, okay, we're doing better. Every day we're getting better. Then it was like 5, 6, you know, times that bell was ringing, that song was coming up. Just creating what they call, I think it was in May, the hospital did May the 4th, and encouraged everyone to, if they want to dress up as Star Wars character, if they were interested in that, do that, come to work and in your gear, right? Just simple things, finding whatever give us joy, whatever makes us put a smile on our face, be it a joke, be it a television, be it talking to our family or friends, or, you know, just reviewing an old book, if that be the case. Just find that 1, 2 small little things that help us, right? For many people, that thing has been exercising, but now we can't go to gym because gyms are also closed. All we are doing is sitting and moping and worrying and stress eating, as we were just discussing before we started the session here, right? We are stress eating and we are not even exercising. And exercising don't just help us maintain our weight, but it also help release these chemicals in our body that help us fight the depression and anxiety, help us keep sane, if that's the word I can use, right? So finding that time, that space to do exercise, even at home. It may not be, you know, we don't have a bike because that's why we go to gym. We don't have at home, but we need to find some ways of doing that, some type of regularity. You know, of course, we can talk about, you know, eat healthy and exercise, but at home, when we are out of our normal, regular structure, we still have to find that. You know, otherwise, if we let stress build up, it's not just mental health, it's physical health too. Stress is one of the most common denominator behind heart disease, blood pressures, diabetes, and you name it. Anything that you can think of, if you add stress to as a causative factor, that's your 99.9% time you're going to be right. So we need to just figure out some ways to help deal with that. People who already have mental health issues, right? People who already have diagnosed depression or anxiety or bipolar, it has been obviously equally difficult for them to handle the situation. In the treatment regime, we have some outpatient programs, right? People go to these programs few days a week, and that would have been their own only social interaction possibly for many people, because they are away from families, and because of mental health issues, they don't have the general broad friend category or acquaintances. So going to a program would be one place they would go to. Now the programs are closed, or very few places may be offering like virtual programming, but that's not the same. You can't do a group meeting. For most places, it's one-on-one. Now, people with depression, anxiety, mental health issues in general, taking care of ourselves, getting ready, leaving the house is not the most, it can be a very challenging thing. Now we are limiting the reason for me to get up, leave my house, get ready. So it's not, you know, it's difficult across the board. Resources are limited. So we just need to make sure we pay attention. We schedule our time for our own mental health, our own de-stressing time, just as we schedule, you know, these Zoom meetings, the same way we schedule meetings with our kids' teachers. We need to schedule time, make sure we are paying attention to our own health, our own mental health, because if we don't pay attention, as we were just talking about, we're taking many roles, right? We are adjunct teachers, we are cooks, we are cleaners, and we're doing our own work. If we don't take care of ourselves, you know, women bind the whole family together. If we are going to fall apart, the whole family is going to fall apart. So we need to take special care of ourselves as we are taking care of everyone else. We can't forget that we have to keep these stress levels down, whatever it takes. With that, I think I'm going to shut up because I can keep on talking forever. So thank you once again for allowing me to be a part of it. I appreciate it. Looking forward to questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ansari. Our next speaker is Petal Robertson, a teacher of English at Montclair High School, where she taught a course on African-American literature, which was so popular that they had to add sections to accommodate the demand. She is the current president of the Montclair Education Association, which is the local teachers union. I hand it off to you. Petal Robertson.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. So, it was so funny it's hard to remember what life before the pandemic was like. So to talk about life during the pandemic, it's tough when we think about education. And I thought about it and I said, education is all I'd ever wanted to do my entire life. And in March, like a whirlwind, teachers were thrown into an education that we had never seen before, where, like the previous speaker said, we had to turn our homes into our classrooms, and we had to navigate systems that we had no idea how to do. And we had to do all of that for other people's children while our children were running around in the background too and needed that attention. And it just felt like this unbelievably hard balancing act. And there was no break. And I think that wasn't just true for education, but for a lot of us when this pandemic hit, there was no break that allowed you to say, well, I will leave that at the office or I'll be done now. You were constantly at work. And what I got from my teachers, where they were working sometimes 14 hours, 15 hours, there was no time that they were turning it off. They were answering emails at all hours of the day, because it was just sort of hard to figure out, where do we draw the line? How do we navigate all of that? And in the beginning, it was really, the plus side was there were all of these posts about, teachers being heroes and how wonderful teachers are. And we finally understand. And, there was so much love and appreciation being expressed to our educators that it made it doable. It was a beautiful thing. But then I think pandemic fatigue started to kick in, and it started, and, there became these unfortunate divides when it was time for school to reopen as to what the decision should be. And it became really, really tough. So I think one of the things that the pandemic has done to education, it has forced us to pay attention to the social emotional needs of not just our students, but our adults as well. And it revamped the way we think about our curriculums, the way we think about school. One of the things that I encourage my teachers, I'm a big proponent of restorative practices in schools. And my association, we created a restorative justice initiative. And when we first talked about it, everyone was like, oh, it sounds like that touchy-feely stuff. But in this pandemic, when there can be no touchy-feely, we come to realize just how important social emotional learning is to our school curriculum. How vital it is that we begin to teach the whole child when we teach math, when we teach science, when we teach English. How vital it is that we begin to care for the whole person when we think about teachers, because education is one of those areas where connection is so necessary. You will need to stand at the door. Sometimes those little kids, I taught kindergarten for 1 year, and it was the best year because every day you're beautiful and every day they love you, right? And you need that. You need, little hands, giving you high fives when they come in. You need to be able to see people. And you all are already doing better than 90% of classes because I can see your faces and not just names on a screen. And that's what the pandemic did. It took the human feel away from education for a little while. And what it forced us to do is what teachers do all of the time, which was recreate their lessons and their curriculum on a fly. I don't know any teacher who even pre-pandemic wasn't put into a situation where they had to automatically think of how am I going to switch this up? How am I going to modify this so that every student in my class has an opportunity to understand and every student in my class has an opportunity to learn? And the pandemic really forced us to do that on a much larger scale. So there were also some really wonderful things that came out of the pandemic. The growth of our social emotional learning, and the access. One of the best things that I saw coming out of the pandemic is the fact that we were able to have these video meetings. parent-teacher conferences with some of our neediest children went from being scarcely attended to being very well attended. When people didn't have to find babysitters, when people didn't have to venture out of the house, when they could have those meetings wherever they were. And I automatically wrote that down as that's something that should never, ever go away. Because if this medium gave us access and gave people opportunity to participate in their board meetings, in their PTA councils, in their parent-teacher conferences, then that's an access that we should have all of the time. One of the other things it did is it allowed for more breaks than students usually get on a regular school day. And at first, when it was happening, I have to tell you, I was one of the naysayers, like, there's too much break time. There's too much break time. And I realized it was so necessary. It was so necessary for us to sometimes give students an opportunity to sit back, reflect on some of the things that they learned, and come back to those spaces. And what we found was, because we're separated, there was an even greater longing to be together, to listen to each other, to hear each other's stories, to take time to actually get to know each other. So those are some of the really wonderful things that we were able to take from it. And as we go forward, there are a lot of obstacles that we see ahead, because what we also saw from the pandemic, it demonstrated to us, one, how wide our gap is, our opportunity gap. When we had students and families that didn't have the Wi-Fi to participate, or who had to go to Panera in order to participate in learning. When we had families have to choose between going in or staying out, or the health of their family, or the education, or their own jobs. Those things became really tough, and it highlighted the opportunity gap that we had in our schools. What it also highlighted for education is how education has been made to take on a lot of the heavy lifting of society. When we had to stop and figure out how students were going to get fed, how students were going to get counseling, some of the things that really don't have anything to do with your Shakespeare class, but have everything to do with what students get in school. When we came to the realization that for a lot of students, school was where they, where some of them got heat, where some of them felt love for the only time in the day, we realized that there were so many things that were societal that education should not have had to take care of, but education was taking care of. So what we hoped really, really came out of it, when everybody had to be an at-home teacher for a little while, when everybody had to figure out how do we accommodate students who still needed these things. What we hope comes out of it at the end of all this, and we have to keep praying that the end is near, what we hope comes out of it is a newfound understanding and respect for education and educators, where we respect what they do. We respect them for the educators that they are. We respect their pedagogical decisions. You know, I joke with people all the time, and I say education is the one job that everybody thinks just because they've been in school, they can do it, right? Where we stop underestimating how hard it is to be the secretary in a school, the custodian in a school, the teacher in a school, the paraprofessional in a school. Where we finally admire these jobs and these heroes and heroines for what they actually are. Because they're your child's English teacher, their math teacher, they're their counselor, sometimes their punching bag when they're so upset and they don't know how to express it, so they blurt it all out at the teacher. They're the person that comes back day in and day out. And what we've done during this pandemic is learn how to cling tighter to each other than we ever had before. And what I'm seeing coming out of the communities of the pandemic are parents who are understanding the plight of the teacher, the work of education, and the bonding that comes with it, and the willingness of families to work alongside education communities so that we can see our way out of this successfully and with everyone well taken care of, with an equitable education for all. So I hope I summed it up. I tried to be brief with it. If I start talking about education, I could go on forever because I love it. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're muted.
You were muted, Ruth.
I was so excited. I jumped ahead. I was saying, I thank you. And as a high school English teacher of 34 years, I certainly can commiserate with some of the challenges and the fact that I think that the teachers are heroes. I think the parents understand that, but anyway. Our third speaker, Reverend Susan Gillespie, has served at Trinity Covenant Church in Livingston, right across the street from Temple B'nai Abraham, for 19 years. And for 14 years, she's been the lead pastor there. She is a classmate of mine. She was at not the same year, but she's a graduate of Douglas College of Rutgers University with a degree in journalism. And she got her Master's of Divinity degree from the Drew University Theological School. She and her husband, John, a retired lawyer, raised 4 sons in Chatham. I had 2 of them in my class. And she is active with her denomination in discernment with new ordinands and serves on the executive board of the Livingston Clergy Association. And I turn it over to you, Reverend Gillespie.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much for asking me to do this. So as I'm thinking about COVID-19 and how it affects religion, the word that came to mind for me was apocalypse. Now, the Hollywood sense of that word is disaster. And certainly for houses of worship, COVID-19 has been disastrous since what we do is gather people together. And that's the one thing we couldn't do anymore. Now, when we think about doing that, we have to pause for a minute and think about all the people we've all lost. And I think at this point, we all know somebody, and maybe too many somebodies, that we've lost to COVID-19. So there are ways to think about how disastrous it might have been, but that's the first disaster. So we're grateful for their lives, and we grieve together for who we've lost and the sorrow that all of us have gone through. But also, if you're an institution whose purpose is to gather people together, COVID-19 is trouble. In fact, I began to think that maybe COVID-19 was designed to be trouble for houses of worship. I mean, what is it we do besides gather together but talk to one another, touch one another, share food with one another, and sing? All of those things are highly forbidden. And I think most of us in this area remember that one of the first super spreader events in the whole country was a religious service. So how did COVID-19 affect religion? It was rough. Everything that we exist to do, it felt like we weren't allowed to do. And even the things that we're commanded to do were especially dangerous. The way that I love my neighbor is to stay away from them. This is a bizarre problem. And of course, it's even worse if the way that you operate as a house of worship is to attract people through just the fine production you put on, right? So the more microphones and lights and cameras and electronic stuff you need to pull people together, the more trouble you were in. So I think religion has really struggled with how to operate institutionally in the midst of this strange pandemic. Now, as Ruth said, I pastor a small Protestant church across the street from Temple B'nai Abraham. The larger Temple B'nai Abraham is, in your mind, that's how much smaller we are. So our production values they're not really what draw people in, but community is. And we really, really missed each other. We really were very anxious about how long this was going to go on. But at the same time, the word apocalypse actually means an unveiling, a revealing. When something is apocalyptic, it shows you something that was real and true all along, but you just couldn't see it before. And so the first thing that happened was we found a way to gather for worship online, just as we're doing here, right? We instantly had to learn how to use Zoom and how to adapt our worship to this strange way of getting together. But the amazing thing about it is we did. We pulled it together. We learned how. It's not everything that it was. And there's many aspects of our in-person worship that we really miss. And there are many aspects of what we do together that we can't really do. but we do get together. We do worship together. In fact, we've gained some people to our weekly worship service who live in other states. So that's been kind of interesting. Didn't see that coming. And they've become very regular worshipers with us. Beyond that, though, we've continued a lot of other things. You know, we have prayer meetings online, Bible study, Sunday school. And I think going forward, just like Petal said, there are some things that you're going to keep. I can imagine that we'll be doing Bible study and prayer meetings online because more of us can participate than ever could before. A lot of people aren't going to get up and go out at night anymore for a Bible study, but they log on and people will drop in the middle of a day for a prayer meeting. They couldn't come to church to do it. So that's been good. I think we've learned some things about that. I think we've learned that, you know, so I was going to say, so every pastor conference I've ever gone to in my pastoral career has told us in very sobering terms that the way that we do church is not going to work anymore, that shifting paradigms are going to come, and we're going to need to get ready for them. We need to adapt now. Well, the paradigm done shifted, and this is it. We learned real quick how to do it. So on the one hand, yes, they were right. On the other hand, I don't know that I can say anymore that I believe that you can shift ahead of time because you really don't know what's coming. But it does help to know that we could do it. We can do it, and we'll do it together. One of the things that I think we've learned from all of this is that we didn't know each other maybe as much as we thought we did. I've noticed that, you know, when we used to come to church, we came to church with our church selves on. And I don't think that we realized that we did that. But now we go on Zoom together and I see you in your home and you see me in mine. And when my dog starts barking, you've gotten to know my dog. We're beginning to see each other in a larger section of ourselves when we're together. And that's been an unveiling too. And we've come to see each other and know each other better and pray for each other more. We know more about who each of us is. I think also we've gotten to know more about people in our church. Even though we're not very big, you tend to talk to people who are more like yourself when you're at church. And we've had sort of these fellowship hours on Zoom, which at first seemed awkward, but what's happened is we've talked to more people who are not like ourselves. And the parents who are going nuts with all their kids at home are getting to find out what it might be like to be a retired person who lives alone, who's been lonely. We've been able to talk across our various occupations and neighborhoods in various ways that we're different. And we pray for each other more. We care about each other more. We care for each other more in lots of ways that aren't organized, but are connected because we're really seeing into one another's lives. And that was an unveiling that I didn't expect. There have been other unveilings though too. Our church is not monocultural. We have a lot of diversity in race and ethnicity. Of course, we all had another unveiling last summer during the Black Lives Matter protests. And I think the way that we've been getting together made it possible for us to go through a study together that was based on the Christian church's complicity in how systemic racism was built in America over time. And we were able to have conversations about that. Not that we're done with that subject and we have much more to learn and much more to learn to do, but that was a good unveiling. A surprise unveiling was that when everybody went home to go to work and everybody could work from home, it was kind of surprising to me to see that most of us did work from home. Most of us had those kinds of jobs. It was really only a smaller portion of people who were essential workers, and most of them were doctors. And that made me realize that even though we're diverse across race and ethnicity, we aren't really very diverse on a socioeconomic basis. And that means that we have to work harder to pay attention. At the time that we all went home and, you know, we were mostly all dealing with working from home and how to teach children from home and all that. A lot of my colleagues who are pastors in New York City pastored very different churches that were going through much more trauma because they were largely Black pastors who pastored Black and Latino churches, who mostly were essential workers, who lived together in multi-generational homes, used mass transit, lived in apartments, much more exposed to the virus. And they had lost many people in their congregations, and many of the people in their congregations had lost many family members, while we were pretty much unscathed at that point. And that was surprising. And it brought home to me, to us, that we do live in these silos, and that we really have to work harder to break through them and break out of them. And we need to address the inequities in our society more personally. So I think that was an unveiling that was really sort of uncomfortable and difficult, but one we must not forget. And I think probably the most difficult unveiling for us to talk about comes from the level of our personal faith. You know, I think for most of us, we go through life with the faith we've got, and it mostly works, and that's all good. But I think when all of this started happening, we may have found that our assumptions about God didn't stand up to the kinds of questions we found ourselves asking. And we should be able to admit that, right? That's what growing in faith is all about. Because one thing that COVID really destroyed was our expectations about everything. I mean, maybe we thought that medical science was so advanced that they pretty much had the answer to everything. And it was really hard for us to see that there's some things they didn't know how to do, or at least not yet. And that's at their best. And all of us are not always at our best, including medical science. Maybe we thought our government had everything all organized and lined up and they'd be our backup. But we were pretty disappointed when we found out that they had empty warehouses. And sometimes they lied. And that was pretty disappointing too. And maybe we thought that America had all the answers. But when even at the very beginning of this pandemic, when lots of other countries that we thought we were better than had really good tests and we didn't, well, maybe the story that we tell ourselves about America had holes in it. And that was pretty discouraging and disappointing too. So then when you start thinking that your concept of God was he would keep bad things from happening to me, especially since I'm one of his loyal ones, right? If we thought that he would rescue our beloveds because, you know, we're extra special to him and, you know, we do stuff right. Well, it didn't always work out that way. And we had some sleepless nights and some long hours demanding answers from the heavens. And I think, you know, that's an unveiling too about where we're at. And if we didn't, I guarantee you, we know somebody who did. So COVID-19 was apocalyptic because it unveiled the truth about a lot of things. And one of the things is I think we have expectations from God that God never signed his copy of. Like he didn't make the deal that we thought he did. And when we've already discovered that a lot of the other things that we think we could count on were maybe letting us down, it's a really rough recognition to realize that our expectations of God need to change too. And that's an unveiling. But I can only speak about my own self maybe, but I know that I make deals with God. That when I pay attention, I realize he didn't sign on to it. But I realize that in the scriptures, God's favorite people were not spared from hardship. And the people that are the heroes of our faith didn't have everything smooth out for them. And things didn't always work out for them in this earthly life. And in fact, their sufferings were often part of their spiritual journey, right? That was the part that was growing them, or from which God showed himself. Their sufferings were actually the unveiling. In fact, this was true of Jesus. So now I think that has become an important part of the work of faith communities in these COVID days, for us to be able to walk together in the bewilderment and in the being stressed out and in the not having answers, that's actually part of the story. We have to remind one another that's part of the long story of faithfulness that we belong to. Most of those who preceded us struggled through really terrible times in life too. It's actually part of the deal. And faith is the evidence of what we do not see. And what we do see is not all there is. Apocalypse is also a word for the end of the world. I'm not a prophet, but I don't think COVID-19 is the end of the world. We've actually lived in really amazing times because in most of the world, throughout the ages, there were plagues and people knew they were coming. And most people didn't have any guarantee that they would live to be 90, and we're starting to sort of expect it, right? In most of the world, throughout time, people lived with governments that weren't competent, and they didn't expect it. In most of the world, throughout time, people of faith had unveilings that caused them to have to change quickly to new realities. And I think in a lot of ways, this is just our turn. I think, some institutions of religion aren't going to make it, and their people will have to find new communities. And many of us are going to suffer as we adapt to a new world. God forbid we may endure loss too. But we're also going to find that in our God and with each other, in a new day and new circumstances, we will have good work to do if we will accept it. If we will accept the unveilings and adapt to them. But hey, we learned how to use Zoom, so we should be all right, right? And that's what I have to say about that.
Yes, we did learn how to use Zoom, and we're getting pretty proficient at it. And thank you for the wonderful words. Our final speaker, our last speaker, is Gianna Akiko Garcia, who is a small business owner. Willow and Olivia Dessert Cafe is a highly rated, whimsical shop she opened on Main Street down in West Orange in 2018. It's a small batch bakery, and it's well known for custom cakes, truffles, cupcakes, cakes, mini cakes, French macaron, and delicious coffee. So I introduce you to Gia Akiko Garcia. You're unmuted. Are you muted?
Can you hear me now?
I think just to speak
Yes.
a little louder. Yeah.
Okay, you can hear me now?
Yes.
I think my AirPods died on me. First world problems, I have no idea. Okay, so hi everyone, I am Gia. You can call me Gia. And as Ruth mentioned, I own Willow and Olivia Bakery Cafe on Main Street in West Orange. From a business owner point of view, everyone knows when this all started, we just had to shut our doors because depending on what kind of business you're in, you can have the people in your stores. And we were kind of the first things they looked at, like, okay, well, close all the stores that are not essential. So if you weren't like a grocery store or a hardware store, something where people needed you every day, you had to close because it's either you risk infection for yourself and your family and the public, or you get fined. So you really had nowhere to turn. So I remember walking into the bakery, getting ready for St. Patrick's Day. And I'm usually closed on a Sunday, but West Orange is, St. Patty's Day is a big thing for West Orange. So I said to myself, okay, well, it's a new year. In January, everyone's on a diet. So for my business in the sweets industry, no one wants to eat in January. No one eats in January. But we wait for that third week in January where all the resolutions come crashing down. It just happens that way. And we start getting ready for Valentine's Day, because that's when people come out again and they, spend the money. And I remember going through that period and getting ready for St. Patty's Day. And then I mark my calendar every day I come in. And 8 months later, I look on the wall and my calendar stopped at March 11th. That's it. That was the last time last year I marked my calendar. And it's so eerie to think, right? Because we take every day for granted. Like I get in there 2 o'clock in the morning and I start getting the pastries done and get the store ready. And it's just a mundane thing. Like it's just natural for me. And to have that stop, I literally didn't know what to do. It crippled me because I was too small to be a small business. I was not big enough to be a small business to get the help from the government. And you felt like no one listened, no one, because everyone was getting help, but I wasn't Shake Shack. I wasn't Burger King, but yet they fell under the small business category, which felt unfair to most of us who are naturally small businesses, who, in order for us to keep going, this is our family savings that we're using. And I remember thinking, I don't know how to do this. Like, I've never felt the fear of losing my business like I did last year. I started my business in 2011. And in 2018, I opened my first storefront. With a storefront, you rely on foot traffic for those sales outside of the custom cakes. So operating on something close to 90% or less than the year before, it was hard. So when we had to shut down, I said, how am I going to do? Every night I couldn't sleep. The stress level was like up here. How am I going to sleep? I have no idea how my business is going to survive. I'm working with my landlord, but there's only so much they can do because they want their money too, So it's like, what can I do? And I remember thinking, just put everything I have, every single thing on the inventory, just take one night, stay up until whatever hour and put everything online. And that's what I did. I moved my entire bakery to make it online with curbside pickup. And that saved me from, I want to say, March, April into May. And then I had to pivot again. Like, okay, well, now people are tired of getting, semi-hot coffee because they're picking their own pickup time, but they won't show up on time. So now the coffee isn't hot enough. So what do I do? Well, we're known for our cookies. It's a very famous cookie. How about we just give them the dough and let them make it? Then I started packaging my cookie dough. So now we're in May. So May, June, July, August. And then here comes August. Okay, what else can I do? What do I do? I have to pivot. Well, every year we do a Harry Potter day because I'm a nerd and I love Harry Potter. And it's become a thing where people come from like an hour away for our Harry Potter day. And it's always in July for his birthday, but we can do it because we can have a crowd. We can have people come in and, be around each other. So what do? I don't know. So, okay, well, we can't do that, but let's just make little pop-up themes where people could get curbside. But then here comes Halloween and people are antsy. Now they want to get out. Kids want to dress up. It's the perfect time to wear a mask without complaining. And I said, you know what? I'm going to chance it. I made sure it was COVID safe. Everyone was 6 feet apart. And we did our Harry Potter day on Halloween day. And it was the best Harry Potter day we've had since opening. And it amazed me, the support. People wanted to support. people wanted to come out, just leave their homes and just be somewhere different with the kids and something other than TV or, or YouTube or whatever. They wanted to be a family doing something else outside of the home because the pandemic did that, and I just remember thinking, my Lord, 8 months ago, I was crying. Every night I was crying. What am I going to do? I don't know what I'm going to do. PSE&G is getting higher and higher because I still have an overhead. But here I am a year later, and I made it through the worst year ever as a business owner. And I thank God. And I have to say, if there are moments where I felt like the only thing that got me through was just meditating, being able to just take 15 to 20 minutes to myself and being still and just in that moment where everything around me is just, it's a non-factor. Even my kids, non-factors, leave me alone. I just need a moment right now. And having to do that every day got me through from day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. Because it's hard, right? We are parents and we have kids. Some kids may be older. We're business owners, but as a business owner, a parent of 2 young kids, a toddler and a middle schooler, they're being homeschooled. One, it can't go to daycare because daycares are closed, and then having to still wake up and go to the bakery and produce for the people in hopes that they'll come. It was sheer faith, because every time I turned that door to open it, I said a prayer. I said a prayer. That person was my best friend. It's like, it's like I was grateful. And when we were able to open up again to like, now we're limited still, every single person that walked through the door, I said thank you. And meant it. Before I said thank you, but now I meant it, because every single person walking through the door now is helping so much. And that's what we need as a community, right? Because we're not getting the help from the government. We're not getting the help from the banks because we're not, they're not seeing us being able to pay that loan back if you want a loan. And the only thing driving us is community and that everyday person to keep us going. And I think social media is a big platform for a business owner. It's great for me because I pride myself on knowing how to use it. But personally, I try to stay off of it because I realized my stress level went up the more I read what was happening, the more I sat there for like, let me just check one thing. And it turned into 2 hours just scrolling through. And it just felt like my soul was being just sucked out of myself. And I love social media, but I like the fun aspect of it. And when I started feeling depressed, it told me something. It told me I needed to step back. And that's what I did. Because I've never said to myself, I'm a person who's always depressed, or I'm depressed. Because like Ruth comes in the bakery, I am always on. I'm always positive. I'm always, like, you tell me how your day is going. Really, let's talk. I don't care. I can sit down and I can drink coffee with you. Like, talk to me. But last year, for the first time, I admitted to myself, I feel depressed. And that was a big thing. So I had to figure out what it was. And it was the social aspect of it. Not being to communicate face to face with people, but just reading all the negative that everyone else is going through and kind of absorbing that. And that's not me. So I had to distance myself from that and I talk to the universe. I'm big into manifestations and stuff. So I'm whimsical. I like fairies. I believe in unicorns. It's like, that's me. And I just think that we all need to find that middle where we focus on who we are, like ourselves, in order to get through and be able to open up to welcome others at this point. Because you can be a therapist, but who's the therapist? You know, and I think we last year showed that so many of us are going through some level of depression. And it's because we're lacking that social aspect of life that we once knew. And as a business owner, it helps your daily when you have that interaction with your customers. So I can't wait for it to open up again so I can invite people and people could sit and have coffee in real glass mugs, you know, and plates and knives and forks and stuff, because it is hard. But I hope that when we do open up, that we keep some of what we are doing now. Wear a mask, social distance, you know, if possible, if someone's sick, you never know. You just never know. But I think we need to keep some of those things in place as a business owner as well, for my protection, my family's protection, and the customer's protection. So that's how COVID and this pandemic has affected me as a small business owner. And I just pray that we all, as adults, take it seriously for the kids, because they're not getting it from each other. They're getting it from us. So that's it. That's me.
Thanks very much, Gia. One of the reasons I asked Gia to come on is to tell you a little bit about how she pivoted from cakes to, you know, actually, Gia, you didn't tell them about your candles. You were doing candles.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
I you know, I followed her on the West Orange 411 page, and she just caught my fancy that she was very, very entrepreneurial. And so she even got into lots of other things. So I really.
Yeah, I can do it real quick, Ruth, because I know we're on a time thing. So in one of my darkest moments, you know, I needed something to like really ground me, like pull me back in, because I was really struggling. And I remember thinking, okay, well, I love candles, but everything around my house that I burned, it just didn't do it for me. So I created this scent, and when I burned it, it literally centers me. It brings me down. So I put that into production, and I sold that for Christmas. And the feedback has been amazing. People use it for, someone said they use it while they're doing yoga, you know, and all this stuff. So it's just something that, again, find that one thing that you can hold on to and really, you know, let it home you in, because it's hard. It's really a hard thing.
You also did a big, good job with cocoa bombs. I mean, she was really rocking.
Yeah, man. It's like, I'm going to write a book soon.
Yes. Well, thank you very, very much. It's very, very inspiring to listen to you. And I guess we can get to some of the questions. We don't have a lot, but people were inspired by you, Gia. People wrote that they were also, I just want to make sure about what Reverend Gillespie had to say, how words were inspiring and kind of helped sort it out. And Petal, we got a lot of people here who are very supportive of teachers. And Dr. Ansari, somebody had a question. They wanted to know if there was a rise in suicides. But you have to unplug yourself. Yeah, okay.
Right. So very good observation. Absolutely, there has been an increase in suicide attempts. What we call self-injurious behaviors. So not necessarily wanting to end your life, but people cut themselves or use cigarettes to burn themselves. And many times what these individuals will say why they self-harm is to feel something, because it's either because they are going through depression and they don't feel anything, or just the social environment have nothing to do and nothing to inspire, nothing to encourage, and they just feel numb. So to just I want to feel something, even if it's a pain. So many times that's why they cut themselves. But absolutely, there has been an increase in suicide attempts or thoughts where it gets to a point that people come into our ER that we are having these thoughts, we're struggling to keep them under check, haven't done anything to harm themselves, but they're afraid they might do it if they don't, get to a secure space, get to a hospital. So definitely that has an uptick in that, absolutely.
Thank you. Stacy Evanstein's made the observation that our pets are going to need therapy when we go back to work. So maybe the pet therapist will be busy. Gia, there was a question as to a couple of questions for you. One is are your products halal or kosher?
My products are naturally halal. I was raised Muslim. It's kosher products, not certified kosher, because I don't have a rabbi on site.
Okay. And also, they wanted to know whether you are open for takeout.
Wednesday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. for walk-ins.
Very good. Very good. And when the weather gets nice, she even has
outdoor seating,
little tables and chairs outside. No, I think that was about it. I think that was really most of the, so many of the things in the chat were good feedback, and people, so you can check yourselves. You can see how many people, oh, here's one for Petal, excuse me. Judy wanted to know, she said, you're such an amazing and passionate teacher.
Yeah.
And she would love to attend your class, that some schools have incorporated asynchronous time during the day, which seems to benefit the independent learner, but not the learner who needs additional hand-holding or guidance. As a parent, what can we do to make asynchronous time effective for our kids to make the most of the time?
So well, first of all, thank you for the compliment. That was so nice. Thank you. So the first thing that I tell parents is to breathe. I think that I tell everyone, end every sentence with "in a pandemic." So if you say, my child is struggling with English in a pandemic. And I think if we all sometimes take a second to sit back and realize that we're all trying to operate in a pandemic, and it doesn't do us any good to try to operate business as usual when nothing is usual. So my first suggestion would be, it's okay if you don't feel like they're getting everything they would have gotten out of a traditional school day, because there's nothing traditional about now. And some of our added stressors come when we try to make this abnormal situation we're in feel like our normal situation. So that would be one. The other thing I would suggest when you have asynchronous time is figure out what are some really creative ways to make them fun. Some students finish math first, they finish English first. With younger children, there are a lot of learning tools all around your house. So when you're doing math problems, there's ways to incorporate things, everyday chores that you do in your house with math. So if they finish their asynchronous and you just want to squeeze a little more math in there, there's lots of different ways that you can do that with counting. I know with my niece, she's a little older, but sometimes what we do is I might ask questions. So I'm an English teacher, so I ask open-ended questions, and I have her verbally sort of think on some of the things we're talking about and expand on those open-ended questions. Because what the pandemic has taught us is that we have to revamp how we see schools. It's not whiteboards and lesson plans anymore, but we have to make use of everything around us, including our time, and recognize that sometimes if your child finishes early an asynchronous assignment, it is okay to be doing nothing. It is okay to take that little breather, to take that little break and recognize that, you know, every second of the day that they are in virtual school won't necessarily feel like sit down at a desk whiteboard school. So in short, my wrap up is to, let's be as creative as possible. And don't worry if sometimes there's time to take a breather.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Reverend Gillespie, Saba wanted to know if you saw more people getting closer to God or more complaining to God.
I think people are not telling me about their complaining to God, but I assume they are. I hear more people asking good questions and wanting to talk about that with people who also ask the questions. So I think this has been a good time, but of course, those are the people who self-select to come to church. So sometimes some of the people you don't see so often, you wonder what questions they're asking. And that probably is the hardest part because you don't run into people anymore. You have to make really intentional connections and people can avoid that. So that's when we all start praying.
Are you doing virtual services?
Yes, we have worship at 11 a.m. on Zoom every Sunday and Sunday school. And we have a Thursday night Bible study and, prayer, things like that. So there are a lot of things people to come to. But it's true that there are some people who are maybe zoomed out and they aren't coming as often, along with the people that we're gathering from new places and far away and that kind of thing, which is true about in-person church too. People sometimes take a breather and then come back, that kind of thing. It's just hard to know how to reach out to people in not heavy-handed ways in this time.
Thank you. Somebody asked the doctor, and sorry, about if she's got some tips on how to stay sane for that we could have. You told us a little bit about what went on in the hospital, but anything that we can do at home? We did talk about exercise.
Right. I would want to, I guess, bring everyone back to what Gia was saying, because she was saying exactly what I was talking about, taking time for yourself. When Gia mentioned about doing meditation, taking those 10 minutes out for yourself and zoning everyone out, whether it's your pets, your kids, your parents, whoever be in the house, and whether you are meditating, whether you are taking a bath, just that 5-10 minutes peace and quiet, doing nothing, just being with yourself, that grounding, that I guess I can use, borrow Gia's word, centering yourself, will definitely be very helpful. But yes, some people like to exercise. If some people like to cook, if that's something you want to do, bake, but finding what works for you, because there are 10,000 different coping skills, not two people won't use the same two techniques for the same reasons. So if you like to listen to music, you like to play music, if you, you want to watch some comedy shows, if that's what your thing, if you like to take a walk, yes, we can't gather together, but we are allowed to take walks outside. Walking, taking in natural beauty is automatically calming. That's very relaxing. Best de-stressor. If you have any parks nearby you, just go take a walk, sit on a park bench for a little bit, take that time. The other things, of course, because we are all together with family, if you can find playing some games with your family, whether it's kids or if your kids are younger, maybe some, you will have to individualize what works for you and your family. But bottom line is you need to find that time for yourself. Of course, doing things with your family absolutely will be helpful, but your own personal time, you have to make that time. As I was saying earlier, make an appointment for yourself. Do that as a schedule. But that is very important to center ourselves.
We had a nurse, a congregational nurse named Karen Frank, and one of her pieces of advice was to have compassion on yourself.
Right.
So, have compassion for yourself. Yeah. And actually, we have been having bar mitzvahs. We have services over Zoom. And we get people who normally don't come because for whatever reason. And it's nice to see, we don't necessarily see them in individual screens, but we know that we're there, in the chats. Petal, Sheila Yankovitz asked, how do you reduce the amount of time kids watch TV? Because of course they're at home on the screen, on the computer or whatever, on the tablet.
That is definitely hard. So one of the things that we started incorporating were we went back to the basics, which were board games. And we started, I used to tell parents, if you punish a child, you punish yourself. Because if you tell a child they're grounded, you have to stay home to be grounded with them. And it's the same idea when we talk about TV time, right? If we tell a child that, you can't be on the TV or you can't be on the tablet, oftentimes that means then you have to become more interactive with them as well. And it's great. And that's one of the good things about the pandemic, because it has allowed us to find time to do that with our families. So I found going back to the basics of Uno games and board games, which you can get easily. You can order online at Target and have them sent over. And we have standard game nights. So we're a very a very big family. So we have some standard family game nights on Zoom where we now look forward to them. And a different, one of my brothers, I have two brothers, either they host or I host, but we have different hosts each time. And then in their own houses, they have stocked up on board games, and there'll be a certain time of day where they'll say, okay, well, we're going to cut the TV off, and they put their phones down, which is really hard for the adults in the house, not as much for the kids, but they put their phones down, they put their phones away, they close their work laptops. And so that electronics rule for the kids, they implement that electronic rule for the adults. And you'll be so surprised at the conversations that come out of it, the discussions that you're able to have. And now that you're, at home together all the time, little adjustments that you can make that are not TV related is to set times for dinner. So everyone is able to sit down to dinner together and make an agreement that we turn phones off and turn them over at dinner time. So we're not glancing at them. Some of those little things, but I think once you join in, it will make it a lot easier.
Somebody said that there's a game called Livingstonopoly, and so they can play that. And there's a big run on jigsaw puzzles. And maybe Dr. Ansari, those people have found those to be stress reducers. And I'm not a doctor. I read about it, and Petal, that's another thing you can do with your kids is make the jigsaw puzzles.
Absolutely. And it's very good for the mind too. Those things are really good for the mind.
I want to direct everybody in the chat. Tracy has put the PDF for the takeaways. Actually it came attached to the Zoom link, and it is on the Temple B'nai Abraham website, tbanj.org. There's a list of wonderful tips that our speakers have put, we have put into a PDF. And Deborah Jacobs said that she put a link in about a different perspective about screen time. My kids are having a ton of screen time, and no, I don't feel bad about it. So there's a link there you can copy, and you can you can get to and see if it will help you with the problems of so much screen time. So Janet?
Ruth?
Yes.
Hi, Susan Kogan. Can I just leave with a word that maybe will make everybody smile?
Go ahead.
Every year, the Oxford Dictionary in England comes out with the new words that were popular. So you could look it up. They had a bunch of them. But the three that I remember, the first one is unmute, which we used a ton of. Next one was social distancing that I like. But the one that I love is Blursday, spelled capital BLURSDAY. And it's when you wake up And you say, what day is it today? It's Blur's Day. And I think that's happening to us. So
And I-
anyway, I just wanted to leave that.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And, you know, as you said, Dr. Ansari said, you know, this too will pass. And we will have our eyes unveiled and we will come up with new ways of learning and new ways of doing business. And while it seems pretty dark now, maybe there are some good things to come out of this terrible time. Janet, you want to?
Thanks, Ruth. Great questions, everybody. Great responses, great feedback. I really want to thank everybody. You know, it takes a village, it takes a community. And I think that, you know, everyone who attended here this evening is hungry for, you know, connection. And I'm proud that everybody, you know, came. And, you know, the one thing that I've learned is that, you know, as we all know, we endure different hardships and serious, you know, painful things that have happened to all of us with regards to the pandemic. And I have learned that while I've always known people to be amazing and awesome with helping out one another, I think they have been extraordinarily more helpful. How can I help? And even people who have less than you have, how can I help? What is it that I can do to help? So if we're going to say that there was one thing that was tremendously positive that came out of the pandemic, was this enhanced sense of humanity and well-being and you know, helping one another. And I think it's really it's a great feeling. It's a great feeling. So Dr. King had an amazing quote that I really enjoy on helping others. And he said, life's most persistent and urgent question, what are you doing for others? So with that being said, I ordinarily tell well, okay, go ahead, Ruth.
The Cantor has asked me to announce that this coming Friday via Zoom and actually via Facebook Live, Temple B'nai Abraham Livingston NJ on Facebook, we're doing a special folk Shabbat with songs of endurance and resilience at 6:30. So you can come and draw strength with us with special American folk songs. So you don't have to know Hebrew and you don't have to be Jewish. You can just come and sing along with us. So thank you, Cantor.
Yeah, that was great, Dawson. Thank you.
Adding that information. I want to, I'm tickled pink. This was a wonderful panel. And I'm so glad that everybody came. It was.
And ordinarily, I tell everybody to drive safely, but we don't have to drive safely because we're all kind of where we need to be, where our tushies are. We're sitting in our safely. Ruth, you want to give something to wrap it up, and really want to thank everybody. And one last thing from me, I really hope and I believe that in 1 year from the Wednesday after Martin Luther King's birthday, we're going to be together and in person. We really are. I know, God willing. So Ruth, if you want to have any final words.
I just want to say thank you to everybody.
Truly.
I want to say thank you. And actually, Joanne Bramnick said that we should all meet at Gia's Cafe, socially distanced, but we should go and have some of her goodies.
Can you?
I'm all in for that.
Sorry, somebody had a question?
No, but can you hear me? You can't hear me.
Yes,
we Marilyn.
Marilyn.
I just wanted to thank everybody. It was wonderful. I just thank you all.
Good, I'm glad. This was wonderful. Thank you.
And Marilyn came up with the topick, so thank her again. It was a great topic. Yeah, everyone give claps up in the air claps.
No, that isn't why. It just
for everybody and Marilyn, yes.
It just hit everybody. I mean, whatever anybody spoke, I have been feeling or suffering or getting over. And it was just so great to hear that I'm not alone in this world.
Not at all.
Thank you all for coming, and we'll see you next year. Maybe
Take
we'll
care,
see- Maybe
everybody.
we'll see you on Facebook Live on Friday night at 6:30.
That's right.
And bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for a
everybody.
wonderful
Be well.
evening.
And Janet. Thank you, Ruth and Janet, for putting this program together.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yes,
love
thank
it.
you.
Thanks so much.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks for
Bye-bye.
having me.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.